Research shows that we begin to use gestures when we are just 18 months old. Imagine, 18 months old. So there's something inherently powerful about gestures. Today, in this video, we're going to explore what are the most important types of gestures in communication. Gestures are an essential part of our communication. They are an essential part of our non-verbal communication. Today, we're going to explore the three most important categories of gestures and how we can be sure not to misread them, but to use them correctly so that we can improve our communication. Stay tuned, because at the end of the video, I'm going to offer you a link to a course that you just might be interested in if you found the content of gestures and nonverbal behavior interesting, because this course goes into it at much deeper depth. The first category of gestures are called emblems. So what are emblems? Emblems are any gesture that we use that replace words. So what do I mean by that? Well, it's a gesture that we use that no language is needed. Just by the very action of using the gesture, there is an understanding of what that gesture means. So I'm going to offer you a little quiz here. I'm going to go through 5 different emblems, and I want you to think to yourself, what does this emblem mean? So, emblem number 1, emblem number 2, emblem number 3, emblem number 4, and emblem number 5. Did you get all 5 of those? Let's just go through them. So what does emblem number 1? I did this. Well, in the United States, where I'm talking from, this means A-OK, everything is fine. However, and here is where we get into trouble with emblems. Emblems are not universal. While this means everything is okay in the United States, in other countries, it's actually something that's very offensive. And if we were to do that in another country, say for example, Turkey, then it would be met with reproach because it's actually something ugly to do or to signal to another person. The second emblem I used was thumbs up, which means, again, okay. However, if you're a scuba diver, that actually means something different. In the world of scuba, it actually means take me to the surface. And in some other cultures, actually, it's something that is offensive as well. The third gesture was the shaka gesture. And in Hawaii, this means, hey, hang loose. But in other cultures, it means something different. In fact, in Germany, it actually means to have a beer or to get something to drink. The fourth gesture I used was a gesture to mean shh, be quiet. Sometimes it's used with some noise, shh. But even without the noise, we're very clear that it means to be quiet. And the final gesture is nodding the head, which means yes, I'm in agreement. Except if you're in Bulgaria, because this means no. So there you have it. These are gestures which communicate a language to another person. However, we've got to understand, like a lot of body language, it is very culturally determined. And we need to know the context in which it is used, because that will determine at times the meaning that we can ascribe to it. So the first set of gestures are emblems. The second set of gestures are illustrators. Now, illustrators are gestures that we use which help with the flow of the conversation and help the words that we are using become more understandable. Just look what I just did there. I'm talking about the flow of the conversation. This is an illustrator. I'm illustrating the flow. And what we know from research is that whenever you're looking at a person using illustrators, for example, this when I was talking about the flow, it actually aids in the understanding of the words that are being used. Now, there are many, many different illustrators that can be used. Say, for example, you can have what's called a baton. The baton that a conductor uses in an orchestra. So sometimes we use illustrators kind of like a baton that we're making points. Sometimes our illustrators are called pictographs, in that we are drawing a picture as well to enhance the words that we're using. So say, for example, if we describe that the woman had an hourglass figure, we can begin to draw an hourglass which helps in the understanding of the words that we're using. Or sometimes our illustrators can be punctuation. So sometimes we can say, you know what, I have nothing more to say about this, full stop. That's English actually, but it's British English. In America, we would say period. So you can see how the illustrator here is helping in the understanding and improving the communication. You know, what we know as well is that illustrators can change, and sometimes people have a baseline of using a lot of illustrators, and sometimes people don't use a lot of illustrators. But just from the pure act of communication, I think it's important for us to realize where do we fall in that spectrum. And that if we don't use a lot of illustrators, to think about increasing our use of illustrators just from the point of view that we know from research that it helps and aids in the understanding of what we're saying. And the third set of gestures are called manipulators. And manipulators is where we touch one part of our body with another part of our body or with an object. For example, a pen, or maybe some glasses that we are chewing the end of, or a pen perhaps that we're tapping with one hand to the other. Now, manipulators are able to signify a number of different things. One of the things that they can signal is increased anxiety. And so when a person feels more anxious, one of the things that can happen is that an increase of manipulators. Person can rub the back of their neck, or else they can kind of begin to play with their hair or whatever. This can signal some anxiety. The second thing it can signal as well is it's just something that we're in the habit of doing, or something that's pleasurable. So say, for example, as well, if someone gets pleasure when they're thinking, perhaps they've got this habit of touching their hair, or perhaps scratching their head here as they think. This can signal a habit. And again, just as it comes with emblems, just as it comes with illustrators, we have to be careful because none of them are universal. And that's when we can get into trouble. When we ascribe universality to a gesture when really there is no research or evidence that it is universal. So there you have it, the three main types of gestures: emblems, illustrators, and manipulators. What I'd love for you to do below is, if there's a certain gesture that you use frequently or you've noticed as well, or there's a gesture that you're curious about, why don't you write about it below? And I'd love to answer any of your questions or comments. You know, gestures are great, but they can also create some confusion when they are not interpreted correctly. I saw a wonderful example of this a few weeks ago. I was having dinner with a friend who was telling me that they had recently opened an office in India. Now, she is Indian, and she said they sent a non-Indian person, American, over to the office to do some training. And when they returned, they reported that although the people were wonderful, although everything seemed to be going great, he said that when he made suggestions, they refused to accept those suggestions. Now, my friend was very curious about this because this normally is not the culture that normally shows itself. And so she said, well, what exactly were you seeing? And he said, well, whenever I was talking about something or making suggestions, what would happen was that people would nod no, that they didn't accept that. And she suggested to him, maybe they weren't nodding no, but maybe they were configuring their faces almost like a side number 8. And she said, in that culture, that is a signal for agreement. That's a signal for I concur. So here we have the person who went there thinking that he was dealing with workers who were not going to accept his tips, when in reality they were, and they liked his suggestions. So therefore, context becomes incredibly important. It's so important for us to know the culture we're in and the signals that they use and the gestures they use, because without that, it can lead to a misunderstanding and a breakdown in communication. Now, if you've enjoyed this video about gestures, I want to invite you to consider taking some further training in the work of Paul Ekman. It's a full exploration of his work on nonverbal communication and also his work when it comes to detecting emotions with truth and lies. If you visit below, you'll see a link to 2 courses that are presently offered that will include some of the information on this video, but also take it to a much greater depth. And if you've enjoyed this video, I invite you to watch the next one, which focuses on how to read body language on Zoom.